My phone buzzed against the smooth surface of my mahogany desk, the sound cutting through the quiet hum of the early morning. I glanced out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown apartment, the city below waking in a rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. I tugged gently at the cuff of my silk blouse, the soft ivory fabric sliding across my wrist, and tried to ignore the familiar tightness in my chest. It was a message from my father. Just 3 words, but enough to bring a flood of memories I'd carefully tucked away. Dinner tonight? I pressed my lips together. Dad didn't know I could actually afford a private chef for my own little celebrations, let alone a restaurant dinner that could rival any 5-star spot in town. He probably assumed I was still the broke, fumbling girl who once couldn't scrape together enough to attend his birthday dinner. And in a way, he was right. That girl existed once. But she had changed. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface of the engraved bracelet on my wrist, the one my mentor had given me when I first took the leap into my career. She'd told me, success isn't about proving them wrong, it's about never needing their approval. I let out a slow breath, the city lights reflecting faintly in my eyes, and typed back, "I'll be there." I knew tonight wouldn't be ordinary. And somehow, I felt the shift in the air, the quiet anticipation of a moment that had been building for years. 3 years ago, I stood outside Amalfi's, a little Italian restaurant my father loved. It was his 55th birthday, and the evening air smelled faintly of garlic and rain. My palms were clammy against the cheap faux-leather purse I clutched like a lifeline. I'd spent the last of my paycheck on his gift, a watch that looked nicer than it cost, and prayed dinner wouldn't be too expensive. When I walked in, they were already seated. Dad, my stepmother Karen, and my half-sister Chloe. All smiles until they saw me. Karen's eyes skimmed my outfit, a plain blue dress that didn't quite fit, and she smiled that polished, pitying smile of hers. "Oh, Lily, you made it," she said. "We weren't sure you'd be able to afford it this time." Dad didn't correct her. He just chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's just hope the restaurant doesn't ask her to wash dishes again." They laughed. Chloe tried to hide it behind her napkin, but I saw. The heat rose up my neck, burning my ears. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "I can pay my share, Dad." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Sweetheart, you're barely getting by. Don't embarrass yourself. Let me handle the bill. You can make it up to me when you're stable." That word, stable, cut deeper than anything else. It meant small, helpless, less than. I excused myself before the appetizers even came. The moment the restroom door closed behind me, tears spilled down my cheeks. I looked at my reflection, eyes red, lipstick smeared, and made a silent promise. I would never stand in that kind of humiliation again. Not for him. Not for anyone. That night, when I got home, I found an old envelope waiting in my mailbox. It was from my grandmother, who had passed months before. Inside was a handwritten note and a small, tarnished silver key. For when you finally decide to unlock your own life. I didn't know what it meant then, but I kept that key on my nightstand. It became a reminder of what I wanted, of who I refused to remain. The next morning, I quit my dead-end job at the boutique, packed 2 suitcases, and moved across the state with nothing but $900 in my checking account and that key around my neck. That was the day Lily Morgan disappeared, and the woman I was meant to be began to rise. The first few months after I left home were nothing short of chaos. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Portland, 1 room, cracked tiles, and a heater that hissed like it held grudges. The air always smelled like burnt coffee and paint thinner from the art shop downstairs. But it was mine. And for the first time, I felt free. Days blurred together. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing in the mornings and taking online business classes at night. Most days, my hands smelled like dish soap and coffee grounds, and I'd come home so tired I'd collapse still wearing my shoes. But every morning, when I woke up, I'd touch that silver key around my neck and remind myself, unlock your own life. Then came the day everything changed. I was late to my shift at a small coffee shop downtown when a woman spilled her latte all over the floor. I rushed to help her, and she noticed the sketchbook that had fallen from my bag, pages filled with designs for handbags I dreamed of making one day. She flipped through them, looked at me, and said, "These aren't doodles, sweetheart. They're products." Her name was Valerie Monroe, founder of a small but rising boutique label in Seattle. She asked me to visit her studio the following week. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Under Valerie's wing, I learned everything: sourcing materials, branding, pitching, and negotiating. She taught me to walk into a room like I belonged there, even when my hands were shaking. She'd say, "Confidence is just silence with good posture." There were nights I cried quietly at my desk, convinced I wasn't enough. But each setback became fuel. My first client came from a local craft fair, a woman who ordered 3 handmade bags for her daughters. I stayed up until dawn finishing them, my fingers raw from stitching. When she posted them on social media, orders started trickling in. Soon, Lily & Company was born, just me, my designs, and a tiny rented corner of Valerie's workshop. A year later, a celebrity stylist featured one of my bags at a red carpet event. That's when everything exploded. Orders doubled, then tripled. Investors called. Within 2 years, I opened my first studio: clean white walls, oak desks, and the faint scent of fresh leather and ambition. Still, I told my family almost nothing. I posted simple photos online: busy week or grateful for new beginnings. I wanted peace, not validation. Sometimes, I'd see their lives through social media. My father bragging about Chloe's college internship, Karen posing in new jewelry, all smiles. They never asked where I was or how I was doing. Maybe that was for the best. Until now. Because tonight, when I walked into that restaurant, they'd finally see the truth. Not the broke, timid girl who once couldn't pay for dinner, but the woman who now owned the very company that catered it. The restaurant was buzzing when I walked in: soft jazz, crystal clinking, and that faint hum of luxury money tends to bring. Amalfi's had changed since I was last there. The lighting was warmer now, the decor modern, but the air still carried the same faint sweetness of basil and nostalgia. The hostess looked up, her face lighting up instantly. "Ms. Morgan, welcome back." For a split second, I saw my father's head turn. He froze mid-laugh. The hostess continued, "Your private suite is ready. The chef said he's excited you're dining with us again." Karen's smile faltered. Chloe's fork paused halfway to her mouth. And Dad blinked, confusion flickering across his face like static. I smiled, calm and easy. "Thank you, Olivia. We'll take that room now." Olivia led us through the restaurant to a glass-walled private suite, all dark oak and candlelight. My father followed, silent, his usual booming presence suddenly uncertain. As soon as we sat down, he cleared his throat. "So," he said, forcing a laugh, "you seem comfortable here. Guess you've been doing okay, huh?" I poured myself a glass of wine, my fingers steady. "Better than okay, Dad." Karen leaned forward, feigning politeness. "We've been meaning to ask what you've been up to, Lily. We see your little posts, always so mysterious." "Little posts? Of course." I set the glass down gently. "I've been busy with my company." "Oh, you're still working with handbags?" Chloe chimed in, voice dripping with that sugary tone she used whenever she felt superior. "That hobby of yours?" My lips curved. Not exactly a hobby anymore. Right then, the restaurant manager entered the room. He smiled warmly. "Ms. Morgan, everything is set. Chef says your usual dessert is complimentary, as always. And congratulations again on the expansion." My father frowned. "Expansion?" The manager turned to him, oblivious to the tension. "Yes, sir. Ms. Morgan's company, Lily & Company, is taking over our restaurant's interior redesign next month. We're honored to partner with her brand." Silence. Heavy, awkward silence. I could hear the faint ticking of my bracelet against the glass as I lifted my wine again. Karen blinked first. "Wait, you own Lily & Company?" I nodded. "Founded it 3 years ago. We design sustainable luxury goods, and now we're branching into interiors and design consultancy." Dad's face paled. "That's your company? The one people keep talking about on TV?" Apparently, yes, I said softly. He leaned back, exhaling hard. His hand went to the tablecloth, gripping it slightly. So, you're telling me, the same girl who couldn't afford dinner that night is now the one who could have bought this entire restaurant twice over. I finished for him, my tone calm, steady. Yes, Dad. That girl. No anger. No raised voice. Just truth. Quiet. Undeniable. Karen looked away, her cheeks flushed. Chloe fiddled with her phone, pretending to text, her hands trembling slightly. I took a breath, let my gaze move from one face to another. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came because, for years, I let your words decide my worth. Tonight, I wanted you to see who I became without your approval. The waiter entered just then with a cake, white chocolate mousse, gold leaf, and a single candle.
He smiled at me.
Happy birthday to Mr. Morgan, he said. Then, glancing at me, added softly, and thank you again for sponsoring our staff's tuition fund, Ms. Morgan. My father's mouth parted slightly, his eyes glistening. You did that? I just nodded. Everyone deserves a chance to unlock their own life. He swallowed hard, emotion flickering in his eyes for the first time in years. And in that moment, between pride, regret, and disbelief, the power shifted completely. For a long moment, no one spoke. The candle on Dad's cake flickered, the flame bending with every shaky breath that filled the room. Karen was the first to recover her voice. Lily, sweetheart, we had no idea you were doing so well. You should have told us. We would have been so proud. Her voice trembled slightly, that same polished tone she used at every social gathering, but now it sounded hollow. I smiled faintly. You weren't proud when I was struggling. You weren't embarrassed. And that's okay, Karen. I get it now. Dad leaned forward, his elbows on the table. Lily, I was just trying to protect you. I didn't want you to fall again. I might have been harsh, but I wanted what's best. I let out a slow, measured breath. You wanted control, Dad. You wanted me to stay small so you could feel big. But life doesn't work that way anymore. His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, wrapped box. Inside was a sleek silver keychain, engraved with 3 words, Unlock Your Life. I slid it across the table toward him. That keychain design was inspired by Grandma's old key. I started selling it the first year of Lily and Company. It's our bestseller now, and every purchase funds women's shelters across Oregon. Dad picked it up, running his thumb across the engraving. His eyes glistened, and for once, he didn't hide it. You always said stability was all that mattered. I continued, my tone soft but firm. So here's my condition. I'll help you if you're ready to grow, not in money, but in how you treat people, especially yourself. Karen blinked. Help us? Yes. I met her gaze. You and Dad have been running on debt and appearances for too long. I know because I looked at the restaurant reservation. You used his old business card. I smiled gently. So, if you're willing to start fresh, I'll pay off the restaurant debt and sponsor your next business. But I paused, letting silence stretch between us. You'll both attend counseling. Real, uncomfortable, healing counseling. Together. Karen's lips parted, shock flashing in her eyes. Dad looked like he wanted to protest, but didn't. Then I turned to Chloe. And you, little sister, you remind me a lot of who I was. Insecure, trying too hard to impress people who wouldn't care if you vanished tomorrow. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry for laughing that night. I nodded. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start. I'll mentor you if you're serious about finding what you love, not what looks good online. For the first time, the table was silent, not from tension, but humility. Dad finally whispered, You sound just like your grandmother. I smiled. Maybe because I finally listened to her. The candle on his cake had nearly burned out. I leaned forward, lighting it again. Make a wish, Dad. Maybe this time, wish for growth, not control. He smiled faintly, and when he blew it out, the smoke curled up like a quiet surrender. The following weeks felt strangely peaceful. The air between us, once thick with resentment, had softened. Dad actually called, not to lecture, but to listen. Sometimes he'd ask how real counseling worked or what kind of books I'd recommend. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Karen sent me a handwritten thank you card, her neat, practiced cursive, looking less formal than usual. She joined a local women's business circle I sponsored, determined to find her own name again. I believed her. And Chloe, she visited my studio last week, shy but curious. She helped with a new bag design and left with ink stains on her hands, smiling, genuinely for once. One quiet Sunday morning, I found myself at my grandmother's old house, the one we'd sold years ago. The new owners had let me visit the garden, still wild with lavender and honeysuckle. I sat on the old wooden bench and held the tarnished key she'd left me, now smooth from years of wear. It wasn't just a key anymore. It was a reminder that sometimes doors don't open for you until you build your own. I thought about the girl I used to be, nervous, eager to please, always waiting for permission to exist. That girl was gone, but I still carried her with me, the way a tree carries the memory of its roots. I took a deep breath, feeling the sunlight on my face, and whispered quietly, "I did it, Grandma." A breeze moved through the lavender, brushing against my sleeve like an answer. That evening, before leaving the office, I placed a new framed quote on my desk, simple white letters on black. Unlock your own life. Every client who walked in saw it first thing. Some smiled, some paused. But every single one seemed to understand. Because that's the thing about freedom. It doesn't shout. It just stands there quietly, knowing it no longer needs permission to shine. And when people ask me what success really means, I always say the same thing. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about finally being so whole that you don't need to.